Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Aston Villa 3, Everton 2. Better late than never, mate. But I'm really happy that we're talking the eve of Champions League football.
Mate, it felt like we just had to, obviously, not only for the chaos that was Saturday, but also for the game tomorrow and everything that kind of comes with that. There was no way, given how long we've been doing this podcast for, mate, that we weren't going to sit here and talk about Villa's kind of debut into Champions League football. So, yeah, very happy to be sat here talking about you, mate. We waited a long time for this. We've talked about some pretty dross results and pretty dross players, but no longer.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. But before we get into it, obviously, today the news has come out about the passing of Gary Shaw. Obviously, very sad news. Condolences to the family and close ones. I think what was really sad about this was the fact that there had sort of been news. I mean, obviously, the death side, but it's just how social media perpetuates like fake news and all that, because like people were saying 3 days ago that he died, and a horrible obviously things to really spread falsely, but obviously on the other side of that you've got so many Villa fans and football fans obviously coming together to celebrate the life of the legend that is Gary Shaw, obviously way before our time, mate, but somebody who we've heard about from such a young age. I'm sure your dad did the exact same as mine, and sat you down with the DVD of the 1982 Bayern Munich game and made you watch it from start to finish, God knows how many times. So this is a really sad day for everybody associated with the club, really.
Yeah, mate, this is a really tricky one. I think the club, obviously we've seen like so many kind of former greats of the past pass in recent years, but there kind of is something about this one. Obviously, a local lad, someone that Villa fans really had an affinity with, and I understandably so. To be honest with you, like it's only kind of really reading the obituary that Villa wrote for him that you kind of get a sense for just how good he was. Obviously, when players are passed down from generations, you can never be too sure kind of what's true and what's not. But for him to win, European Player of the Year, to kind of spearhead our attack with Peter Witt all the way through to the, success in the European Cup back in 1982. Like it's a genuinely sad day for the club. You imagine that given, Dennis Mortimer's tweet that, the guys were all supposed to get back together, that 1982 success team was supposed to get back together for the Bayern Munich game and spend that evening together. For him not to be there will certainly leave a big hole, and so I'm excited to see kind of what tributes the club pay over the kind of coming days. Obviously cast a shadow over tomorrow's game for sure, particularly as it's back in Europe's premier competition. It's sad that he kind of won't be around to witness it, but no, like what a player. And I think obviously when Jack Grealish was playing for us, Gary Shaw was always the kind of reference point that my dad used. That was kind of his Jack Grealish, a local lad, even with the hair and everything like that, like someone that instantly kind of fans drew a connection to. And so I think for a generation, he kind of really stands for something and stands for what Aston Villa were around that time. So yeah, very, very sad day indeed.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. But we should talk about the amazing result at the weekend, the comeback against Everton, because this was really impressive. And I'd be lying if I said it 2-0 down I wasn't slightly worried, but obviously it was sort of fresh in my head that Everton are a pretty weak team mentally. I think when you obviously look at the fact that we would have a Champions League game only 3 days later on the Tuesday, 27 minutes in to be 2-0 down, and for Onana to go off injured, and I'm using air quotes for people that are listening and not watching. A lot of this is like, this isn't ideal. You want to get a couple goals early on, rotate the lads, give people as much rest as possible, travelling away to Switzerland. and it just wasn't meant to be, really, was it? I think, it's fair to say it wasn't Amadou's best game. Gets hauled off at half time. Definitely wasn't a game that Pau Torres will, be looking back on and thinking, yeah, that was a brilliant performance by me. That I think he struggled like a lot in this game, and it's always against those kind of Calvert-Lewin mold of forwards, isn't it, mate? Those physical pressing machines that are just stronger than him. He seems to come undone, but obviously for that first goal, what did you think on the first goal, mate? Because I did think in defence of Amadou, he's totally stitched up with that initial ball from Konsa, isn't he?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Obviously, first and foremost, like, it's a great finish.
Absolutely.
It's a great finish, and I think that I think Onana has obviously kind of will take the blame, but ultimately, like 9 times out of 10, I think Dwight Manil is a very good player. He's very kind of direct, and he's very good in that situations, but he's done kind of so well to finish it from there. And for me, it was kind of really difficult to kind of attribute blame to anybody in particular. I don't think it's a great ball. I do think it's a foul. I do think it's a foul. I didn't in real time. I was kind of sat in the lower Trinity. I had a good view of it, actually, and didn't think it was a foul. However, kind of watching it back, I did think that it was. I think Amadou kind of goes to ground and stays down, hoping that VAR will kind of bail him out. But yeah, I think it's kind of one of those where you almost have to hold your hands up, really. And yeah, I do think in hindsight it probably was just over the line, but I'm not massively aggrieved that it wasn't kind of taken chalked off. Sorry. So yeah, it was a difficult one to kind of gauge. As I said, in real time, I was just kind of impressed by the finish. But looking back, I do think there's cause maybe on a different day that that would have been pulled back.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you're almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you get up and play on, are VAR even going to look at it? Do you try and get the decision? You could tell what's going through Amadou's head, really, can't you? Not sort of covering himself in too much glory, but all will be forgotten in the coming weeks, that's for sure. For the Everton fans listening to this, and I imagine there will be some, because Everton fans are pretty active on the old socials and YouTube and that. You lot were terrible, but the one thing I have to say is I don't think there was a blade of grass that Tim and Idrissa Gueye didn't cover in that game. They absolutely smothered our pivot of Tielemans and Onana and gave them nothing all game. And I think it worked in their favour for most of the game, trying to force us out wide. But then after, obviously, Mikalenko comes off injured, Young gets a book in the first half, I think it was as well. We ended up just managing to find space a little bit better down those flanks. But I mean, in this game, mate, again, I hate to sort of beat a dead horse, because it must be genuinely miserable being an Everton fan right now. I know you work with one, mate, so I'm sure you've been having these sort of discussions in the office today. But how Dominic Calvert-Lewin doesn't walk away with a joint match ball with Ollie Watkins is absolutely crazy, isn't it, mate? Obviously, it's a really good finish from the header. I think it has to be said to put them at 2-0, but questions will probably be asked internally about how we picked them up with the zonal marking. There were so many instances, even in the second half, when they were attacking the Holte end, when Dia was marking up Michael Keane, and I'm thinking, zonal marking is like, it's like football gone woke. I can't stand it. We need to end zonal marking, mate, because this put us 2-0 down.
It's really confusing watching Everton, and you know what? Like, my thing was coming away from this is they have a really good team.
Yeah,
I was impressed with so many players. That, as you say, you talk about that midfield of Idrissa Gueye and Tim. Tim looks a completely different player. Mm-hmm. Honestly to God, like, if he hadn't walked in with Iro Burnham on the back of his shirt, there's nothing about his game that even looked close to what we saw at Villa. At Villa, he was kind of this number 6. He looked quite languid on the ball, very calm, a dictator of play. Whereas he's kind of come to Everton and he's this all-action, 110% midfielder. He's a ball progressor. He carries the ball up the pitch. He snaps into tackles, snaps in a little too much. If you ask Amadou Onana, I'm sure. But yeah, he's this kind of all-action, box-to-box midfielder that looks, and I imagine for Everton, like, it's kind of pick him up for 10 million quid. You'd be pretty buzzing with that deal. They then bring on Orwell Mangala as well, who's a good player, had kind of Premier experience at Nottingham Forest. I think that was a PSR deal. Got these 2 wingers in, Jack Harrison and Dwight McNeil, who are direct, who are quick. No fullback's going to want to come up against either of those 2 players. And then over front, you've got someone like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who was had the beating of our offside line time and time again. He had Pau Torres unscathed. Pau didn't know whether he was coming or going. Like, he would come short and Dominic Calvert-Lewin would spin in behind. He could back up into him. Pau just could not take that physical battle. He was putting on Pau every single time, making sure he stayed well clear of Ezri Konsa. Obviously, I'm not as sold on Michael Keane. I don't think Everton fans are either. But then they bring on this 6'6" Jacob Bryan off the bench. And the pieces are all there, and I think that's kind of the criticism of managers like Sean Dyche, is he did so well to get a tune out of a team that was like greater than the sum of its parts at Burnley, but actually when you give him sound parts, can he then make that into a cohesive team? Like that team, the way that they played, how physical they were, how nasty they were, like for them to kind of go down like they have so far this season is pretty remarkable, actually. And so that was my kind of main takeaway. I was like, this team were really difficult to play against, like, especially away from home. Like, you'd think that team, if you'd have watched them there, you'd be like, mate, nobody's going to Goodison and walking out with a win this season. And yet teams will time and time again. And that was pretty crazy to me. I was really, really impressed by Everton. And like, if I'm Dominic Calvert-Lewin, like, and I know he's kind of made of cheese and that's kind of his downside. But when he's playing like he did yesterday, like if you put him, obviously he was strongly linked to Newcastle, like if you put him in a side like that, like, and he played like he did yesterday, he would score goals for sure.
Oh, 100%. Like during lockdown, there was genuine like Benzema comparisons, like when he was fit and firing and it was COVID ball, Ancelotti ball in full flow. Element and Dye as well. What a player. What a pickup. They've seen their opportunity there and absolutely pounced it with him. He's a wonderful player. But I can't help but feel like the first goal for Villa from Watkins comes at such a crucial time because, we've seen it so many times, but when we go behind at Villa Park, obviously the fans are great, always get behind the team. Obviously you go 2 behinds. Sometimes it can be a bit of a different story, can't it? But, glad everybody got behind the lads. And, only 11 minutes later, we've got ourselves a goal and the lads have given themselves the belief that they can get back into it. It's a wonderful cross from Luca Dean. It's an exceptional header from Ollie Watkins at the back post to beat out Keane and Pickford there is genuinely really impressive. And it came at the right time. I wasn't too bothered about us not getting a second just before half time. I think that was sort of enough. Obviously, Ollie maybe gets fortunate with the second goal in how the ball sort of falls to his feet. I think, was it Young that headed it or was it Harrison? Somebody headed it back.
I think it was Harrison,
weren't it? Yeah, because Harrison was playing quite deep a lot in the second half, weren't he? Almost like a wing back. Obviously, it comes back to Ollie in that situation. He's going to score. He's had another couple chances in the game as well, where Morgan's played these lovely little 1-2s, these flicks. He's put one across the box as well, which Ollie couldn't quite get to. And obviously said after the game, didn't he? Should have walked away with the match ball. What did you think of Morgan Rogers in this game, mate? I know I've just gone on a tangent about Ollie, but I thought he was phenomenal. And some of the link-up play that he was sort of getting involved in these little flicks and the sort of like behind, he's not even looking, he's playing these balls behind him. It feels like he's always on the cusp of doing something absolutely amazing. And there was a chance, I believe it was he had 2 similar chances actually, one in the first half, one in the second half, where He's done a little 1-2. He's run onto the ball, and he's maybe just snatched a little bit too early. He's gone for the Hollywood, like the goal he actually scored for England in the international break, where he had that sort of first time come inside, bam, top bins moment. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. You guys are probably sick of me, sort of waxing lyrical about Morgan. I absolutely adore this guy, and it just feels like every game. I know I sound like a broken record. He just keeps impressing me, mate. It's confidence. Confidence is key.
Exactly that. I actually think that he's got almost too much. Like,
Yeah,
I know he's got here. Like, when we talk about the link-up play, there's almost too much of it. It's like he'll get into the box, and like we've seen that he'll do it with JJ. Like there'll be a 1-2, and he'll kind of do that layoff with the back heel, and then either like JJ or he will run onto it. Like they've got that down to a T. And you actually kind of wish that if he was still kind of coming like out of his shell, he'd probably take it first time and just try and shoot, like try and pick up the corner, force a save or something like that. Whereas now he's kind of so confident in his own abilities that I think he'll try and drag around another man or flick around the inside, or, tried it in the first half where instead of kind of taking the shot immediately, he cuts in on his left foot and then tried the shot, and it kind of went straight at Pickford. And like he's an absolute joy to watch, and I've got absolutely no doubt that it will come. And when it does come, like we've seen enough kind of evidence so far this season to show that like it is going to come in boatloads for him. But like at the moment, you kind of think that if he knocks like 30% off his confidence, the shot would probably come earlier, like that kind of stuff. But like he is a joy to watch. He's the kind of player at the moment that I think, you go and pay the entry fee for. I think neutrals are going to love him. He's just so direct and plays kind of exactly as you'd want him to. And the confidence that he's playing with, as you say, mate, is just fantastic. But that kind of the last ball, exactly when he decides to shoot, that's what needs to be worked on. But when it clicks, it's going to be fantastic.
Oh, mate, absolutely. But when you talk about confidence and confidence being key, I don't think you can not talk about Jhon Duran, can you? Oh my goodness, mate. You know this Barclaysman trend? Jhon Duran is Barclays. He's a man out of time. The way he hits a ball is so Barclays. And I mean, there's been a lot of debate, a lot of discourse. A lot of people have gone, "Oh, is this the best goal that we've seen in a long time?" I think John McGinn will have something to say about that. Fans of a certain age are saying it's very Savo Milosevic-esque League Cup final. Absolutely wonderful goal, mate. And the fact that Villa are on 9 points, Jhon Duran's got 3 goals in 3 games, coming off the bench. He's earned us those 9 points himself, and the feelings that he has around whether he should be starting and getting more minutes, or maybe he should have moved on or whatever, he will be feeling totally vindicated because he's doing the fucking business, man. He's doing the business. It's the hardest thing to do on a football pitch, is score a goal, and he's rescued us time after time after time, and we saw how useful that was in Europe last season. So it's going to be interesting to see whether he gets the nod over Ollie Watkins, and I'm not suggesting that he should or he will, but knowing the sort of situation that we're in with Ollie, with sort of managing minutes, getting him up to speed, withdrew from England due to not being fully fit. Obviously, he played 84 minutes the other day, so clearly Ollie's in a better place than he was when we played Arsenal. But there's genuine chance for Duran to start in Bern, mate, isn't there?
Mate, it's almost impossible. You can't keep him on the bench much longer. It's either you have to start him, you have to figure out a way for him to play with Ollie Watkins, which, for what it's worth, like we saw a lot of that against Everton, and it looks almost like, I don't know how you defend. That was crazy to say, but I don't know how you defend that. Yeah, I don't know how you defend that too, because both are capable of so much. You look at the kind of 3 goals that Duran has scored for Villa this season, they're all so different. And he's capable of doing so many different things that, kind of when I talked about Dominic Calvert-Lewin, it's exactly the same with Jhon Duran in that he can spin it behind. He's got the pace. He's a massive threat in the air because not only is he massive, is he strong, but he's got a massive leap. You want to let him shoot from outside the box. You've got the goals against Liverpool, you've got the goals against Ajax, you've got the goals against Crystal Palace, you've got the goals against Everton. Like, he's building up a real catalogue of what he's capable of from like 80, 20 yards on the half turn, first time shots. There's not really anything he can't do. Okay, he's not he's not someone that you could see dropping in deep and feeding in midfielders and getting the wingers into play. Like, he is a talisman, but that's what Ollie Watkins has been so good at for so long, kind of leading the line and bringing other players into play, getting on the end of chances. And so, we have to do one of the two. I think with Ollie Watkins kind of getting back to full fitness, he admitted against Everton that he's not quite there. I think despite it feels crazy to say, like, he's just come off a game where he scored 2 goals, but don't think it was his best game. I think he was very self-critical, and I think he's right to be. I think he should have walked up with a hat-trick. There's a chance that Ian Maatsen cuts back to him in the second half, which is gilt edge at the near post, and we've kind of seen a few of those. And so if Ollie is kind of in that funk, then you should give the start to Jhon. But it's the Champions League. This is something that Ollie Watkins dragged us to almost single-handedly, like with the goals that he scored last season. This was kind of my criticism, and it still is that we're too leaky for a side this good. We concede too many goals.
Yeah.
You can't be conceding 2 goals to Everton at home and to quarterback 3-2. We conceded too many goals throughout last season. I think we'd conceded 14 more goals across the league season than the side before us. Who finished 4th, whoever that was at Newcastle. Our defensive record for where we finished in the league last season was a real outlier. It was a complete anomaly. And I don't think that's a trend that's going to continue. It will kind of go back to normal. And so our defense has to as well. But when you've got those 2 guys on the pitch, like, Jhon Duran comes on at the moment and he's going to score. You knew when he came on the pitch yesterday. I mean, none of us expected him he was going to score how he did. But you know that he's going to score. And can you really only get 20 minutes of that a game? Like, what is he capable of within 90 minutes? I genuinely don't know. But all I know is we can't keep waiting around to find out, I don't think.
No, absolutely, mate. We need to see it. And I think the thing is as well, we're at a point now where obviously the Champions League is so big, new format, 8 games, every point matters. I think you're going to want at least 8 points to guarantee yourself a playoff round, an extra roll at the dice, an extra 2 games to try and get into the knockout phase of the tournament. But we're genuinely in a situation right now, mate, where playing Jhon Duran isn't necessarily playing a weakened side or a weakened player. Like, in the form he's in right now, genuinely he could start over Ollie Watkins. So it's going to be interesting to see how we manage that. And obviously, Young Boys, very tough place to go for many reasons. They've not had the best of starts to life in the Swiss League. They're yet to win a game. They sit rock bottom, having conceded the most goals so far in the season. However, this is a notoriously tough place to go in Europe for one particular reason that has been reported a lot today. This is an AstroTurf pitch. And, to those who aren't aware, you're probably thinking, why does that matter? Us common folk play on AstroTurf pitches all the time and we're fine. The amount of ACL injuries that happen on these turf pitches are actually frightening, and I don't have the data to hand. You just have to take my word for it. But you can, go and search this, whatever. Christopher Nkunku did his ACL pre-season on a turf pitch in the United States. So many instances of this happening. Too many for to name off the top of my head. So there's a worry there. And obviously I imagine the pitch is going to be a lot quicker than a grass pitch as well. But obviously good news, team obviously trained on the pitch today at the stadium, at the Stadium Wankdorf. I hope I pronounced correctly. Young Boys at the Wankdorf. Who thought that was a good idea? Who really thought that was a good idea? Come on, fucking hell. I know everyone's heard that before, but Jesus Christ, that's terrible. This is going to be a tough game, man. Away from home, first time back in the Champions League. All this time, mate. It's 42 years, mate. 42 years.
Oh, and it all comes down to this. This is a really difficult game. And it's very difficult to kind of know how to gauge it because everything about me says, this is tough. Young boys are far more seasoned at European level than we are. Obviously, they're a side that I feel like Man United play in the Europa League like every season.
Oh, that's a lovely little subtle dig. That is a lovely little subtle dig. Yes. Get the United slander in there. Get the United slander in there. Let's go.
It's a great story of work. I've got to jump in and tell it now. There's a Villa fan who I work with, Carl. I think you listen. He's an absolute what a guy. He's married to a family of United fans, and for her dad's birthday, bought her a United shirt with the Europa League patches on, which I thought was hilarious. And it's I've been told all these terror stories about young boys away and that turf pitch. The ball carries different, the ball bounces different. It's a completely different setup to grass. And obviously we've had one training session on it, and it'd be interesting to see. But this is the barometer of how serious Aston Villa are in this competition. Young boys away in the Conference League is a tough game. It's a game where you maybe take a point, but you're in the Champions League. Our away games, kind of all of them really, our away games look like they could be a Europa League group. And we have to maximise that. If we're here, the club, all the messaging from the club is that we're here to compete at this level, that we're here to compete at the highest level, that we're not just in Europe to make up the numbers. This is about getting the club permanently back to where it rightfully belongs, at the pinnacle of European club football. And if that is the case, you have to go and beat them. You have to go and beat them, particularly with the form that you mentioned. And this is not me saying that I expect them to. This is not me saying that they will. But all I'm saying is that given kind of all of the messaging from the club, if we are going to if the Champions League is not just a fun day out, a chance to reminisce, a chance to go and experience and just kind of hear the music and check out, if we want to do this season after season, you have to beat young boys away, because there are going to be Juventus at home. There is going to be Bayern Munich at home. There's tougher tests ahead, Leipzig away, Monaco away. And so, if push comes to shove, this, Bologna at home, those kind of games, those are the ones you identify and say, yeah, if we're going to really make our mark in the competition and make the most of a softer Champions League draw, it probably has to start here.
Yeah, and the thing is, it doesn't even matter because we travelled so poorly in the Conference League. The Hibs being perhaps the only exception, and AZ Alkmaar. We go to Legia Warsaw, we get absolutely pumped, next level humiliation, because I think we all expected that would be a walk in the park. That was a steep learning curve, not only for the players, but for the fans as well. Ajax away, we didn't win. Lille away, we didn't win. Olympiacos away, obviously, famously, we didn't win. So, it's incredibly, we can't take anything for granted, mate. At the same time, I totally appreciate what you're saying. We should, if we are serious, be winning all of these games. But this is going to be really hard. And it's not just me sitting here on a fucking podcast and saying that so I don't look stupid tomorrow when, we hopefully talk about it afterwards, mate. It's the reality of the situation. I think Definitely. It's, we spoke about it a few times last season, didn't we? About how we felt like the Conference League was maybe a season too early for us and for the squads. And now immediately after, not even winning the competition, we're in Europe's premier competition, the Champions League. So, listen, we can't take this for granted whatsoever. But, on the other side of that, mate, you're totally right. If we are serious, you've got to go to Bern, you've got to go to Young Boys away, and you've got to go and get 3 points, haven't you? Because Bayern Munich at home is going to be incredibly tough. Juventus at home is going to be tough. Even Celtic and Bologna, they're all tough. I could sit here and, use any anecdote in the world and exhaust the phrase book, but it's very plausible we don't win a single game in the Champions League. And I hate to be a Debbie Downer about it because I'm so excited and I can't wait. And I've already got my accommodation and travel booked for Bruges. I'm ready. I'm locked in. Get me there. I can't wait. But I travelled 4 times to watch Villa in Europe away last season, mate, and I didn't see one single win. So maybe I should stay away. Maybe it's good that I'm not going.
I was about to say that, mate, it's absolutely right, and like I don't want to get my words twisted and say that, like, you know, that I'm kind of writing them off that we're Aston Villa, we should go there and win. Like I totally agree that it won't be easy. No game in the Champions League is easy, but this is, with no disrespect, probably about as easy as they come.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Champions League opponents, like and so like that's where it's kind of difficult to gauge. Our away games, you make a very good point, mate. Our away games are almost preferable to our home games.
Yeah,
like it's at Bruges, it's at Bern. Like Leipzig is probably the most favourable. I'm trying to think of the top of my head of those kind of pot A teams.
Yeah,
like it's not the glamour tie that we wanted, but it's not like, you know, we've gone there and got good results in pre-season. We played them this pre-season, so there's a good bank of knowledge already there. And obviously we lost then, but you know, we've kind of already come up against them this season. It's probably about as favourable away from home as you can get. But yeah, I mean, Bayern Munich, Juventus at home, I think we need to set those fixtures up well and go into those games knowing that we can come up with the defeats that, you know, like on paper we should pick up in those games, and know that we've done the business elsewhere. Kind of go into those games with the best possible position. I feel like we need to kind of have some points at the boards where we can really go at that. Like, it's not like, Christ, we really need to get something out of Juventus to like stay in this competition. We need to go to that knowing that, right, we've got some points on the board. We took care of business on the first match day. It's freed up this kind of, and like they think like 12, 15 points can get you knockout football in the Champions League. So take care of Young Boys, Bologna, Club Bruges, and then you pick up 3 points elsewhere at Monaco. Maybe you get that fairy tale win against Juventus, Bayern Munich, and you know you're in the Champions League knockouts. Like it's not too difficult to do that, but it has to start tomorrow, I think.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I'm not going to ask you for a score prediction. I'm gonna let you off this time, mate. I don't think either of us could bear that, but yeah, it's exciting. I hope everybody out there is having a great time. I've got to give a shout out to Paul, who came up to me before the Everton game, said he listened to the podcast. It was lovely meeting you, Paul. My friend Jordan, who I was with, I've never mentioned that I do a podcast, and he was like, "That was weird." He was like, "What's that all about? Is that like for goal?" And I was like, "No." And I had to sort of like explain, "Oh, we do this like little podcast." And he was like, "Oh, I didn't know I was with a celebrity." And I was like, oh, "Shut up!" Like, but no, Paul. It was lovely to meet you. Shared some very kind words about yourself, mate, and the podcast. So yeah, shout out to you, Paul. And thanks for scoring me some brownie points with my boy Jordan. But yeah, guys, if you enjoyed the podcast, make sure you hit a like, leave a comment down below. Let us know your predictions. You're not going to get mine or Dan's, but we'd like your score predictions if you made it this far. And subscribe if you haven't. Up the Villa.